surprising development. Johnson & Johnson's top-selling schizophrenia treatment may work no better than older pills sold for a fraction of the price. This is according to a study this week in the New England Journal of Medicine. And for more, we're joined by Bloomberg's Shannon Pettypiece. Very interesting here.
Well, yeah, the product at issue here is an injectable form of the drug Risperdal. Now, Risperdal has been used for years to treat schizophrenia, but around the time that the patent was going off and generics were going to come on the market, J&J came up with this injectable form. And they hiked up the price. They charged $7,000 a year for this injection versus the generic pills, which cost about $1,000. And to justify the price, they said, well, patients are more likely to take their medicine if it's just an injection every couple months rather than a pill that you have to take every day. And so that strategy was working. They sold about $1.5 billion of this injection last year. Well, the problem is this study came out and said, well, the injection doesn't really help patients comply with their medicine any more than the pill. Patients are just as likely to end up back in the hospital having gone off their medicine with the injection as with the pill. And in addition, folks taking the injection had more side effects. So this really throws a monkey wrench into J&J's whole argument for why you should be using this more expensive drug.
Well, who picks up the tab on this more expensive drug?
Well, it's been Medicaid that's been paying for this added cost for the past few years since this came on the market. Most schizophrenics are disabled or poor, so they qualify for the Medicaid program. So if you sort of do a back of the envelope calculation, Medicaid may have paid an extra $1 billion a year for this product when they could have been getting the same benefit from these cheaper drugs.
And J&J's response to all of this?
Well, now J&J actually funded this study, and as you said, it was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, so a peer-reviewed large medical journal. You know, they kind of raised questions about the study design, how it was conducted. You know, they said, well, you know, we need to do a larger study, but the researchers of the study said there's really no reason anyone should be using this product.
Today, the Insider Exclusive goes behind the headlines in deadly drugs, Johnson & Johnson's Risperdal, to examine how Steve Scheller, founding partner of Scheller PC, and Brian McCormick Jr., managing partner of the firm, are leading the legal efforts to hold Johnson & Johnson's Janssen unit responsible for the serious adverse effects and deceptive marketing of their antipsychotic drug Risperdal and any of its derivatives. In lawsuit after lawsuit, J&J's Janssen unit has been charged with making misleading claims about Risperdal's health risks and effectiveness in letters to thousands of doctors, violating states' deceptive trade practices laws. At the heart of the lawsuits are Johnson & Johnson's, and particularly their Janssen unit's, attempt to market Risperdal for bipolar disorder, dementia, mood and anxiety disorders when it was only approved initially for psychotic disorders such as schizophrenia. Of course, only so many people have schizophrenia, so marketing the drug for a slew of conditions other than that boosted their customer base tremendously, never mind that it wasn't approved for those conditions. Victims' lawyers allege that Janssen lied about Risperdal's dangers just to make money. They also allege that Janssen hid Risperdal's diabetes risk and tricked Medicaid regulators into paying millions of dollars more than they should have paid for the medicine. Johnson & Johnson's Janssen unit send out an army of salespeople to doctors' offices, nursing homes, Veterans Administration facilities, and jails to tout Risperdal as a proverbial miracle drug for mental illness and dementia. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration told the company to stop the false and misleading marketing claims not once, not twice, but 3 times from 1994 to 2004. But the company reportedly continued to include marketing the drug for unapproved uses right in their business plan. In 2006, research showed that up to 2/3 of prescriptions for Risperdal were for unapproved uses that had little or no scientific support. Worse yet, elderly dementia patients who were prescribed Risperdal for off-label uses were found to increase their chances of death by 54% within the first 12 weeks of taking it. Other research published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found Risperdal to be no more effective than a placebo and is associated with a long list of potentially devastating side effects. Recently, Johnson & Johnson ended their most recent courtroom loss in Texas with a $158 million settlement in January 2012. The Texas settlement recently won court approval. Risperdal's global sales peaked at $4.5 billion in 2007 and declined after the company lost patent protection. The newer, longer-acting injectable version, Risperdal Consta, has $1.5 billion in sales in 2010, according to Johnson & Johnson. The U.S. Department is demanding that Johnson & Johnson pay about $1.8 billion to resolve the civil claims by federal regulators and some state attorneys general. Johnson & Johnson and Janssen have also been sued by more than 11 states seeking reimbursement for Medicaid or other public funds paid on Risperdal prescriptions. In this insider exclusive special, we will examine how the drug companies get away with deceptive pharmaceutical marketing for so many years, pocketing billions of dollars of profits and then paying only a small percentage of those billions in fines and settlements. Steve and Brian will share why you need to beware of the medical pharmaceutical complex, and especially how the FDA is not able to adequately protect the American public. It's more interested in protecting the interest of industry. The bottom line is this: pharmaceutical companies, the same ones you trust to safely manufacture medications that could alter your very life, are the top corporate offenders on the planet. And this is not unique to only Johnson & Johnson. A large number of pharmaceutical companies are guilty of fraud, cover-ups of fatal side effects, and huge kickbacks paid to doctors. Steve and Brian exposed the shocking truth that off-label marketing, which is this industry's most common illegal drug company practice, has resulted in the largest financial penalties from the United States government in the last 20 years. Of the 165 settlements comprising $19.8 billion in penalties during this 20-year interval, 73% of the settlements, 121 of them, and 75% of the penalties, $14.8 billion, have occurred in just the past 5 years. Only in America, if you are a pharmaceutical executive or a lobbyist representing a drug company who has collected a litany of charges including medical fraud, criminal salesmanship, gaming the insurance companies, repeated lying to federal officials, and manipulation of data regarding life-threatening adverse effects of drugs that have killed so many people, can you get away with a fine, a surge in the stock market after a settlement, a financial bonus, and the personal satisfaction in not having to apologize so you can continue business as usual. Steve's life and career is dedicated to changing this. And because of that success and dedication, he has been continually asked to help some of America's most powerful people in making a positive difference, from Secretary Hillary Clinton and former President Bill Clinton to the 45th governor of his own home state, Pennsylvania, Governor Ed Rendell.
I wanted to take this opportunity to thank Steve for what he does in the public sector. Of course, first and foremost, he's a great lawyer, he's a great family person, he runs a terrific business, all of those things. But Steve loves politics, loves government, understands that with all its warts, it's the only way to get things done, to make real change happen in this country. But he just doesn't pontificate, he just doesn't sound off about what needs to be done. He puts his money where his mouth is, and he puts his energy and his work product where his mouth is.
Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It is my great pleasure to introduce Steve Scheller and Brian McCormick to the show. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Today we're going to talk about the drug Risperdal and the damage and the tragedy that is done with a lot of kids. How did these cases, and you're at the forefront of a lot of these cases, how did the cases come to you?
Several years ago, we had we were contacted by somebody who knew misconduct was going on in the drug company. We can't talk about it because these cases are not public, but at the same time we got calls from a client, a mother whose son had grown breasts. And I said, what? What do you mean grew breasts? Yeah, we're being told it might be the drug Risperdal that's causing it. Well, I said, why did your son get prescribed this drug by a doctor? Was it a psychiatrist? She said, yeah. Well, because he was having trouble in school, and the doctor thought this would help.
Mm-hmm.
Her son put on probably 100 pounds. Grew breasts, but at the time they didn't know that the breasts were permanent. They thought it was the weight gain caused by the pill, which is bad enough because excess weight causes diabetes. It causes a whole bunch of other side effects that are bad for your health. And what happened is, as time went on, the breasts didn't go away. And the mother ended up finding out about me and our firm, because we have expertise in drug product cases, called me, and I said, we need to investigate what this is. I then found out that there were a large number of adverse events from this drug Risperdal. In fact, at the time that her son was taking the drug, it was not approved for children for any purpose. It still isn't approved for the purposes it was prescribed for this woman's son. And the boy ended up having double mastectomies. His life has been devastated. It's bad enough that he had problems in school to deal with, but then he had to deal with this. Now, what we've faced since we had this, we now have over 70 cases, and we expect many more. In fact, we just got a case last night of a boy that just is having a double mastectomy today.
Yeah. You also are representing some people who have gotten diabetes as one of the side effects.
One of the major side effects of Risperdal is, besides the weight gain that Steve talked about, is the weight gain sometimes and often leads to diabetes. But often, even without the weight gain, a perfectly healthy individual, man and woman, who can be taking Risperdal, it increases their blood sugar in such a high level and over such a consistent time that they are diagnosed or suffer from diabetes type 2, which is better known as adult onset diabetes. And we represent individuals that have been are suffering from this as well as from the gynecomastia cases.
Why the FDA permits this drug to be marketed for children borders on, in my view, insanity. Mm-hmm. This drug should not be permitted to be used for children.
Well, let's examine it for a minute. The FDA has not authorized it to be used for children, correct?
Well, now it is for children with...
The first years, up until I think 2006.
The drug was first approved by the FDA in 1993, and it was approved by the FDA for a very small market of people, less than 1% of the population, just for bipolar disorder. Then it was expanded a little while later into schizophrenia, which is still an enormously small population in the United States. Then in October of 2006, the drug was finally approved to be used in a small, very small percentage of children with irritability that had autism. Not just your normal autism, not that autism is normal, but a small branch of autism where the child would have some violent tendencies. Mm-hmm. So in October of 2006, it actually became approved to be used in this small percentage of children. But what we believe and what we've alleged in a lot of our cases is that the drug manufacturer was promoting and marketing Risperdal well before October 2006 into the child and adolescent market for these kids who shouldn't have been on it in the first place because it wasn't approved. But in the second, is that they were making so much money off of it that they were going.
And let's talk about this. How this was the scheme actually took place when you said the drug companies were actually promoting it. How are they doing this?
Well, the way they promote it is they get studies done
in foreign countries.
In foreign countries, they could be done in Czechoslovakia, could be done in Indonesia,
that are
Singapore.
Unsupervised by anybody.
Well,
correct?
they claim they're supervised.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know that FDA isn't going to send somebody over to Russia to check out a study being done there.
Right. I remember reading about one particular medical study, I think it was done in Tanzania. And the guy that headed up the clinic, this is a very poor village, the guy that headed up the clinic was driving a brand new Mercedes to and from his house, which was a very nice house, and he had gotten this about the same time that he started heading up this study. Obviously, it was purchased for him by
A lot of
someone.
money
Yeah.
exchanges.
So they get a
hands.
study. Now, I'm trying to get at where some of the problem areas that could be corrected here. A study comes from wherever.
Right.
That is shown on a printed piece of paper by a sales representative to doctors, right?
Right.
And doctors say, well, great, I didn't know that, right?
Well, I mean, the way it should work is
Yeah.
sales representatives are not supposed to, for a drug manufacturer, give anything to a doctor for what is called an off-label use. And while a doctor can prescribe a medicine for anything,
Yeah.
the FDA only approves drugs for very certain limited uses.
Right.
So if a sales rep had gone into a doctor's office in Philadelphia in October of 2005 and given the doctor something on child and adolescence, that was against the law. If the doctor asks for it, then he's permitted to give it to it.
So the sales rep could physically have a piece of paper.
He could carry it around.
He
and
could
they
carry it in 2003, 2004, 2005. He could carry it around, show it, as long as he doesn't give it.
And they were provided
Right?
with these.
Yes. And the sad part of it is, who knows what takes place in that doctor's office? You're not tape
Yeah.
recording
Now,
it.
some of your whistleblowers, have you had people come forward who were sales reps
Yes.
and said, these are the documents they gave us?
Why else would the drug manufacturer give a sales representative something that talks about a child and adolescent study
Yeah.
when it's not approved for child and adolescent,
Yeah.
unless they want that sales rep to give it to the doctor?
No, I'm going to get back to this same. Doctors aren't stupid. I mean, they graduated from medical school, right? Do they have this study from? It says on there from Czechoslovakia, from Nigeria, and does that hold credence with them?
Well, it says it, first of all, it'll probably say it in a footnote. And
In a
it's not,
footnote.
it's
If
not
you're
going to be
lucky-
across
if
the
you-
top
yeah.
of it. Yeah,
You're not gonna know it usually.
And they're not going to know that the pharmaceutical
And
company,
so
for the most part,
the
sponsored
doctor
it.
does this, prescribes it. Why? He makes money.
Well, the doctor prescribes it for, often because if he's a high prescriber, he gets benefits from the drug company.
Yeah, he gets trips.
He gets trips, he will get
Speaking
paid to be
engagement.
speaking engagements, he'll be asked to participate in doing trials on other drugs that the company is considering marketing.
And I understand that sometimes pharmaceutical companies may invest a lot of money in a new building at a university.
In a university.
Right.
Some of our most prestigious universities,
Harvard.
Harvard,
Let's name them.
Emory, University
Yeah.
of Cincinnati,
Yeah.
all over the country.
Yeah.
They gain lots of money from these things. And universities, for example, obviously get grants, and they love those grants.
Yeah. Let's talk about the cozy relationship between pharmaceutical companies and the FDA.
It's a real sad problem. They will give awards. They invite the FDA people to events that they hold. They ask them to speak. They may not pay them directly, but they give them benefits of being talked about. They send their own people in to help work at the FDA sometimes on a volunteer basis, sometimes as interns. And then the exchange between the FDA, when somebody works for the FDA and leaves the FDA, the drug company gives them a job.
Yeah, and speaking of jobs, working for the government doesn't all pay that well, does it?
No.
Going to work for a pharmaceutical company might boost your salary, what, 300, 400, 500%?
Right.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And if you know that eventually, if you've been working for the FDA for 10 years and your children are going to be in college soon, and you can go and work for a pharmaceutical company in 4 or 5 years, why would you do anything bad to that potential employer
Yeah.
who's going to be paying you a lot more money than you're going to be getting?
How do you change this?
The way you change it is you start at the top. When you find that a company has engaged in this misbehavior, you put the CEO in jail, not with a bracelet at home, and not for 30 days. That will put a stop to it quite quickly. Number two, you prosecute more. You do what you have to do, and you enable whistleblowers to be supported and protected when they come forward, which they are now to a substantial degree. But the government now is looking more closely at this fraud because it costs our society so much money in healthcare costs. And the biggest problem is in these psychotic and SSRI drugs. It's, as I've said before, it is very difficult to know the diagnosis. It's very subjective. There's no blood test.
It's hard to measure it.
There's no x-ray.
Yeah.
There's no way you can confirm it.
When you bring a whistleblower case, you said earlier you work with the U.S. attorneys.
Right.
How receptive are they to what you just said about putting executives in jail?
The U.S. attorneys are beginning to look much more effectively at this. They haven't done enough because their resources are limited and because the drug companies spend so much money to defend them and have the money is huge. You're talking about billions of dollars, hundreds of millions. They have law firms that do nothing but bill for these things.
Right. There's also a protection layer like there are in the banking industry where the guy at the top is going to say, I didn't know anything about it. Right? It's hard to prove the connection.
Right. But you can get, they subpoena the documents, and that's where we come in. We go through those millions of pages of documents, those millions of emails, and we help find the material. That is important. The second thing that needs to be done is the off-label prescription of these drugs, antipsychotics, SSRIs, should be absolutely prohibited.
I want to thank both of you for appearing on the show today. The word is going to get out, and hopefully some of these problems that we see in the medical, pharmaceutical complex will be corrected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.